Good evening to everyone present here. I cordially welcome you all to Tech Bharat 2021, Empowering EduTech and Health. Tech Bharat is an initiative of Lagu Udyog Bharati Karnataka and IMS Foundation. Tech Bharat is envisioned as a platform to support startups and SMEs and be a guiding light to them in navigating their entrepreneurial journey. We thank the Government of India and Government of Karnataka for their support and encouragement. We welcome you to this session on education in India after NEP 2020. In the words of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, National Education Policy 2020 will sow the seeds for starting a new era and will give a new direction to 21st century India. NEP has been crafted towards creating a just and equitable society and also ensure it touches the life of each and every citizen. It aligns with the education systems with the aspirational goals of 21st century education while remaining consistent with India's tradition and value systems. To discuss this further and the changing landscape of education in the country in the NEP 2020 era, we have an eminent panel with us today. For this session, we have with us Ms. Jyoti Vijay, an edupreneur in the space of higher education. She'll be moderating the session today. She is committed to development of human capital at the grassroots, those at the bottom of the socio-economic and the so-called academic performance. Through Responsible B School that she co-founded a decade ago, she has been experimenting with ambitious rural graduates through a variety of innovative learning processes. At a larger platform, she is committed to promoting good and effective governance and leadership in public institutions as a state nominee to the boards and senate of Bengaluru City University, NIT Goa, and Bangalore University. She is also associated with the Center for Educational and Social Studies, CES, as one of its executive council members. We thank you for accepting our invite to moderate and cordially welcome you, Ms. Jyoti.
Thank you, Mr. Vishnu. Thank you, Team Tech Bharat.
We also have Dr. Taranath. He is a professor of botany and director of College Development Council at the Karnataka University, Dharwad. He has served as the registrar of Rani Chennamma University, Belagavi, in his prior state. With over 27 years of experience in higher education, he has guided numerous candidates for their doctorate and research work. Dr. Taranath is also a life member of Karnataka Rajya Vignana Parishad and is involved in popularizing science. A noteworthy contribution to be mentioned is his role as the supervisor of Government of Karnataka project on Kuvempu Biopark at Kuppalli, Tirthahalli, Shivamogga, and has organized 50 biodiversity awareness programs during the period 2006 to 2008 for various stakeholders. He was awarded as the best professor in botany by Pearl, a foundation for educational excellence awards to higher education in India in the year 2018-19. I now request Ms. Jyoti Vijay to take over and introduce the other esteemed panelists and also moderate the panel discussion. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. To continue with Team Tech Bharat's introduction of the panelists of today's discussion, I go to Dr. Padmavati, one of our other esteemed panelists. Dr. Padmavati is the director of the Center for Educational and Social Studies, Bengaluru, the organization that has been proactively working on implementation of the National Education Policy 2020 with the Government of Karnataka and several other private universities and institutions. As a passionate field researcher, Dr. Padmavati has coordinated and headed nearly 30 national and international survey-related projects with various organizations. She has contributed to the drafting of Karnataka State Youth Policy as a member of the drafting committee. She served the then Karnataka Knowledge Commission as Senior Research Associate. She has been actively involved with the Karnataka Task Force for NEP 2020 as a consultant. We welcome you, Dr. Padmavati.
Thank you so much.
Our other panelist is a very young and a very passionate academician and researcher, Dr. Chetan Singhai, an alumni of the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and receiver of prestigious Erasmus Mundus Scholarship. He holds joint degrees from 3 different international universities in Europe and was the visiting faculty at one of the prestigious universities in Germany. He was awarded with the Social Justice Medal by Honorable Chief Justice of India, Ministry of Law and Justice, Government of India in 2007. Currently, he is the Deputy Director, Ramaiah Public Policy Center and Associate Professor at the Ramaiah University of Applied Sciences. An academician and a passionate researcher in the areas of higher education, lifelong learning, and international relations and policy studies, Dr. Chetan has published over 50 research papers in national and international publications. He recently co-authored a book for law students. He was one of the chief consultants and member of the technical advisory team that drafted the National Education Policy 2020. A very warm welcome to Dr. Chetan.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Well, today's evening is for all of us to discuss and present our thoughts on the one of the most happening topics in the country, which is the National Education Policy 2020. I've thought of structuring the whole discussion in this manner, if it's all agreeable with the esteemed panelists of the evening. I would request you to initially give a brief perspective of each one of you on the given topic, which is education in India post NEP 2020. For about 3 to 4 minutes, please share your thoughts on how have you been associated either individually or through your organizations that you are associated with NEP. How is that you have been associated with that? And what have been your areas of work relating to NEP? And your brief perspectives on today's topic. So we start off that way. I start with Dr. Tarana, and then post this brief introduction on the topic, reflecting your thoughts on the given topic. Then we go on through a few questions that I have drafted, and then we go on taking one by one and hear from each one of you on your perspectives on that. So shall we start with Dr. Tarana? Request you to throw light on given topic today. NEP 2020, sir.
National Educational Policy 2020 focuses is an instrument of change, focusing on revival of our ancient traditions, culture, and educational scenario in the new era of 2021. You know, higher education significantly contributes towards sustainable livelihoods and economic development of nation. As India moves toward becoming a knowledge economy, society, and more Indians likely to aspire for higher education. The requirement of 21st century, quality higher education must aim to develop a good, thoughtful, well-trained, and creative individuals. It must enable an individual to study one or more specialized, in-depth understanding, and also to develop a character, ethical, and constitutional values, intellectual curiosity, scientific temper, creativity, spirit of service, and 21st century capabilities across the range of wide disciplines, including sciences, social sciences, art, culture, music, drama, theatrics, vocational subjects, etc. A quality higher education must enable personal accomplishment and enlightenment, constructive public engagement, and productive contribution to the society. At the societal level, higher education must enable the development of an enlightened, socially conscious, knowledgeable, and skilled nation that can find and implement robust solutions to its own problems. Higher education must form a basis for knowledge creation and innovation, thereby contributing to a growing national economy. It's a knowledge society. Knowledge is the capital of our society. It represents the key to more vibrant, socially engaged, cooperative communities and a happier, cohesive, cultured, productive, innovative, progressive, and prosperous nation. NEP, by transforming higher education institutions to a large multidisciplinary universities, colleges, higher education institution clusters, knowledge hubs, each of which will aim to cater the needs of 3,000 or more students, keeping in mind our ancient universities of Takshashila, Nalanda, Vallabi, Vikramashila, which are thousands of students across from India and world studying in a vibrant multidisciplinary environment, amply provide demonstrated a type of great success that large multidisciplinary research and teaching initiatives. As a new education, national educational policy focuses on three things. One is a research intensive universities and teaching intensive universities and an autonomous college granting degrees. It primarily focuses on a undergraduate teaching. It would be smaller than a typical university system. Growth will be in both public and private institutions with a strong emphasis on developing a large outstanding public institutions with public funding. And one more thing, what is important, MERU, multi-educational research universities. So in ancient Bhanabhatta's Kadambari, there is a reference on 64 kalas or arts, art, drama, music, philosophy, then science, social sciences, mathematics, chemistry. A person should have inculcate a knowledge of everything to develop a total transformation of an individual to an accomplished person in knowing everything. It's a total development of a perspective so that he can address any challenges or any issues concerned to the environment, any problems pertaining concerned to the education or personal problems, national solutions, or any market-based things. With this, I open for the further discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Taranath. Thanks for sharing your perspective in general about the topic. Maybe now move on to Dr. Chetan. May request you to share a little about your association with higher education in general, NEP, and its related work.
So thank you, Professor Taranath sir, for setting the context, and thank you, Jyoti madam, for enabling the perspective of today's panel discussion. I have 4 points to share at the outset about the larger overview that you would like to seek our inputs on, and I'm sure eventually you would go deeper into some of those issues. So, as an insider of the policy making of NEP 2020, I'm so happy to note that we are discussing about, very progressively and optimistically about what is going to come next, NEP 2020 and after. So that is where I would flag first point that I would like to highlight is NEP 2020, the uniqueness of NEP 2020, or in management, they say USP of NEP 2020 is that it addresses 4 E's. First E, it talks about equity, how to address equity and overcome the challenges with regard to equity. Second, it talks about expansion, how to expand our higher education setup, because right now we are still struggling with a very, very less or very bleak gross enrollment ratio of 26% of GR of eligible population who's enrolled in higher education, which is not even close to mass higher education, I would say. It's very kind of skewed towards that number. The third E, aligned to what Professor Taranath said about knowledge economy, it talks about excellence. So equity, expansion, and excellence, all the three have been the core of this NEP's larger perspective while it was in the making and while it was being drafted. These 3 E's were anchoring the overall thematic approach, and that is what we need to explore what is going to come next for India in terms of higher education. The fourth E, that is again the uniqueness of the NEP, I would say, is evidence-based policy. This is one of those unique experience that you could have or while you read the NEP document. That every policy recommendation that has been made has been backed with a deep and at the same time very practical or pragmatic rationale for why they make this particular policy recommendation in the document. So that is deeply rooted into the evidence. It is not driven by experience or expertise only, but very strongly driven by evidence. And this is a very important dimension of the current 21st century higher education that India would like to engage with, while it goes back to its roots, as again Professor mentioned, ancient roots, which itself is an evidence of where we were and what we aspired to what we want to be today. In other words, to kind of complete that first point, 4 E's: equity, expansion, excellence, and evidence makes this NEP 2020 stand out. And as a result of that, it is something that we would want to evaluate because this is what we are going to witness going forward. The second quick point I would like to make is that NEP 2020 looks at education as a continuum. It does not see pre-primary, primary, secondary, post-secondary, higher education, and vocational and skill education as watertight compartments. It sees education as a continuum, right from the age of 3 till lifelong learning, as they say, cradle to grave learning, right? There's a very unique dimension of the NEP 2020 document. And I think that also is an important component which makes NEP 2020 a document that was something that we need to reflect and be ready what it is going to envisage in coming years that India would see. Third quick point, I would say, as a result of all the other points that I mentioned, we are now moving towards education 4.0, from education 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0, which is where what we say as learner-centric education system. I think that is something which is already visible in some institutions in the country. That's what some of these scholars say, that we have islands of excellence in the sea of mediocrity in terms of higher education institutions. I think we are already seeing those seeds that are being sowed in some institution, but now with NEP 2020, that's going to be reality, with kind of autonomy, with the kind of changes that are seen at the systemic level. And the last point I would like to quickly stop and then come back to questions in terms of setting the context is, again, we are looking at macro, meso, and micro level changes in higher education with NEP 2020. I think, again, it makes it a comprehensive document, a holistic document. And I think NEP 2020 next, what we see in the next 10, 15 years. Last point I was trying to make here was the macro, meso, and micro changes that we are going to witness with NEP 2020. That is regulatory changes, institutional level changes, and individual level changes who matter in higher education. I think that is what we are going to envisage in the coming years, with the respective temporality component of 2030, 2025, 2035, 2040. That is what is the timeline that has been set. So these are my quick 4 points, Dr. Jyoti, and I would request you to come back with questions as planned. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chetan. Equity, expansion, evidence. If I missed out the other E, there was some kind of a technical problem. I'm not sure at which end. Thank you so much for sharing your initial thoughts. Over to Dr. Padmavati, please. Your quick views on the topic of the day.
Thank you so much. At the outset, I would like to thank the Tech Bharat for inviting and providing this opportunity. And sincere thanks to both the speaker for setting the context very well. I should honestly say there is nothing much for me to add to what these two experts have said. But very quick response is, the NEP is considered as the most ambitious policy of India. And the two most impressive recommendations or changes that are going to happen to Indian education system is the regulatory reforms and the introduction of the holistic and multidisciplinary education. It's more of a student-centric and learner-centric policy, which is going to make learning the most joyful process for students. And with whatever the interventions the states and the centers have proposed through NEP, is going to strengthen not only our education as a system, but also each and every individual who are involved in the education system, including the stakeholders of higher education. And this is going to be a very important policy intervention from the students' perspective, because it's going to create an ecosystem wherein learning becomes much, much easier for students. Even the policy like multiple exit and entry is going to provide a much needed ecosystem for Indian youth who could, enter the education system and without being labeled as dropouts or discontinued, can come back to the education system to continue their education at any point of time. So these are the some of the very, very impressive policy intervention that's going to be introduced under NEP, and much more things have been already said. And I would quickly say in few words, the association, my association, or rather my organization association with the NEP making. In fact, CES for Center for Educational and Social Studies has been involved in NEP making as well as the implementation. Our president, by virtue of our president, Professor M.K. Sridhar sir, being a part of the National Education Policy Drafting Committee, we have been very well guided and given a very deep insight into how the policy has been made. And some of us at our center have been very seriously and deeply involved with the state government and other higher education institution in policy implementation. And we have been interacting with several stakeholders, including colleges and universities, and how to drive the policy forward. One of the most uniqueness of this policy is it is clearly states what the recommendations are, what the institutions are supposed to say, but has given a greater scope when it comes to implementing the policy. It says the stakeholders must be consulted, including the state government as well as higher education institution, while implementing the policy. So this is, I think, this is the first policy which has given that flexibility and a liberty to each and every institution, including the faculty members and students, to choose their learning path and how they want to progress within the education system. So these are my initial comments. And CES has been involved in facilitating the implementation of the policy at the state level as well as the national level. So thank you so much. Over to you, ma'am. Looking forward for the questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Padmavati. I'm very thankful to all the panelists for having made that very quick introductory note on the topic of the day. It's important to note that we have easily another 45 to 65 minutes time, and we can go cool and share our thoughts at length. Given the way the panelists are distributed in terms of our diversity, yet we are all in the space of higher education. There has Tech Bharat also expects a good amount of thoughts on the school education too. I have one or two questions on the school education. It's nice to see we have a senior most academician like Dr. Taranath, who also comes with rich administrative experience. We have at the other end, millennial generation, pure researcher with a good amount of international exposure, Dr. Chetan, who can bring different perspectives. And Dr. Padmavati is a true field researcher and a lot of policy advocacy related work that she has done. I'm sure this is going to be a very interesting and insightful discussion. The way the first introductory thoughts were put across, I see I should change the structure of the questions or the line of order of the questions that I had actually noted. I will take it up with first and foremost, very quick, maybe or 2 minutes, 3 minutes from each one of you, since you have already set the note on that. What is that we think fundamentally would get altered as NEP 2020 gets implemented? As NEP 2020 gets implemented, what is that that would get fundamentally altered in the Indian education space? Anyone could choose to start, Dr. Chetan? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think this question is something which has been discussed in the implementation task force in the government of Karnataka also. I think one major thing, and I'm sure other our distinguished colleagues here on the panel would definitely add more, but I'll add one point, is that with the implementation of NEP and going forward in the next few years, I think the mantra would be of the institution, by the institution, for the institution. I think that is going to be the major change. And I think that is, in other words, it means substantive autonomy with equal accountability, but at the institutional level. I think that is going to be a major change. While we talk about other things, so I would value this as my top ranked change that is going to happen. I'll stop here because I'm sure I'd like to hear from others. This is one point I would like to flag.
Wow, great. So Chetan put it across as autonomy that comes with responsibility and accountability. That's one fundamentally getting induced into the Indian education system as NEP gets rolled out. Can we hear from Dr. Taranath, please?
Yeah. In continuation with the Chetan, I agree with his point of view. And it is a autonomy to the institutions and a flexibility in adapting different courses of all different courses, as such as different disciplines. It may be art, culture, drama, total in the curriculum, and also designing the course and the implementation at the level of a teacher who can impart, and also flexibility in terms of option of exit in a degree system. Okay, first year, if they complete, they get a certificate course, 2 years program, a diploma course, 3 years a bachelor degree, but 4 years degree is very, very important. It develops a person with capabilities and capacities to understand, and all in totally multi-dimensional development of a personality with a perspective plan and perspective thinking, perspective contribution. Thank you.
Over to Dr. Padmavathy, please.
I think probably I will put it across what these two speakers have said in a different words, I suppose. For me, this entire education system will undergo three major changes. One is the structural change, the second one is the regulatory reforms, and the most ambitious one is the introduction of holistic and multidisciplinary education at all levels of education. This is not only limited to higher education, it is also included at the school education as well. And these changes will bring in the paradigm shift at the Indian education system as the NEP starts rolling out. Probably in about a decade or so, Indian education system will be an integrated holistic knowledge hub wherein the learners will enjoy learning, and all Indian higher education institution will emerge as a global hub for research and innovation. And of course, faculty members will become the facilitator of knowledge who would play a very key role in implementing this policy. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay, good. So when we say fundamentally what would get altered is there would be a lot of autonomy which comes with responsibility and accountability, which means there would be changes in the regulation, the quality standards, the accreditation, the way it is being funded, and as a result of all this, the kind of talent pool that lands in the country, that gets produced in the country would get impacted. Is it right? That's what is
Yes.
that will get fundamentally altered, and finally a good and effective talent pool is available for the country is what is being looked at. Thanks so much. So moving on to the next question. As Dr. Padmavathy already mentioned in one of the points that she was highlighting, NEP is being looked at as a learner-centric policy. The much-spoken academic credit bank is expected to produce lateral movement of learners across geographies and across timelines. I think it would be good for us to discuss with few examples as is being envisioned by NEP 2020. With some examples, if we can see how the implementation team or the NEP 2020 has envisioned this lateral movement of learners. I don't know if there can also be lateral movement of teachers also. It would be good with examples if we can discuss on this. Dr. Chetan, to start with.
Yeah, so I think more than examples, I would say I would like to flag the operational aspects which are currently being set forth. For example, now the UGC, the University Grants Commission, has solicited inputs across the country on the academic bank credit and its implications by February 5th. The suggestions are solicited, and I think that's one first step of seeking those kind of case studies which could be highlighted, and at the same time discuss the challenges with regard to that. So this whole flexibility and mobility issue, some of the universities in India are also doing. If you see some of the universities in especially liberal arts or social sciences, they have initiated this model. And unfortunately, because of the colonial system that we have borrowed and we are exposed to the affiliation system or examination system as such, it was difficult to implement those kind of innovative models. But institutions which have already exercising some sort of autonomy by themselves, irrespective of the NEP, that is as on date, they have already almost adopted it. Like I would say, some of the state private universities were able to do it, like Ashoka University, for example, Shiv Nadar University. They've initiated that model of, for example, introducing something called as advanced diploma in research. That is a fourth year component. So that is something which brings those multiple disciplinary perspective together while they have a typical 3-year undergraduation program. So, but it has to now fall into a system, and that is where it becomes very critical to initiate national higher education qualification framework. The General Education Council, which is envisaged in NEP 2020, would play a very important role in not standardizing per se, but having some structure to the curriculum where we could create those kind of mobility and lateral exit and entries across the nation. Because another unfortunate scenario that we witness is that as many states that we have is as many syllabus and curriculum we have almost. So that has created a lot of confusion, and we value the diversity, the local context, but at the same time, it has created so much of barriers for mobility and exit and entry at various levels. I think at the systemic level, we are looking at those changes going forward in the decade or so, as Dr. Padmavati said. Once that comes in, I think we are looking at some more examples that could also be highlighted. But that's why I said operationally, these are the initiatives which have been in place in terms of conversion or converting the text into action. These are some initiatives which are already taking place. I think that's what we need to look forward to. I think then the case studies and examples would fall into place is what I would like to highlight. Yeah, with this said, stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Yeah, Dr. Taranath, please. Yeah.
Breaking the barriers presently in vogue in different universities. It's a major issue in the implementation of the national educational policy. And the lateral movement is not, that's one basic requirement is to create an ambient environment for the lateral movement, and also academic bank credit. Getting some courses completed elsewhere, adding to a individual credit, so that at the end of the year, once he completes all credits, he can get a degree. But as our Chetan envisaged, it requires some more time. It may be possible after 6 years or 8 years or 10 years. Not now.
Dr. Padmavati, please, your views on.
I will take on from there.
Yeah.
In fact, for me, NEP is hailed as the most student-friendly and learner-centric policy. And some of those recommendations or the provisions of the policy which makes it a learner-centric policies are like, flexibility for students in opting the subject of their preferences through multidisciplinary education, and learner-centric pedagogy, which is going to focus on experiential learning. A lot of learning will happen not only within the classroom, but outside. There will be a lot of community engagement is happening. Students will participate in the nation building activities, ideation at the state level and national level. All these are going to be a part of their curriculum. And the provision for multiple exit and entry in higher education is going to impact millions of students who otherwise would become or called as a dropouts or discontinued. As we know, in the current system, those who enter the higher education system and for some personal reason or family reason, societal reason, if they exit or if they go out of the education system, there is a minimal opportunity for them to come back and pursue their studies. So NEP is going to provide that multiple exit, which will definitely going to create an ecosystem for millions of students to continue their studies. And the students' mobility between and among higher education institution is also, which is not possible in the current system, will also impact students' learning outcome and their intellectual growth. For example, one course may be good in Bangalore, some other course may be good at Delhi. So if this mobility is provided to students, they will be exposed to the best of the best knowledge within the higher education framework. And also besides these, the policy calls for creating an ecosystem, as Sir was mentioning, within the institution and outside of it, which will be conducive for students' learning. Like the policy talks about setting up professional counseling centers and providing scholarship to socially and economically disadvantaged group, and also introducing bridge courses to address if there are any learning gaps, especially if a student has come from a rural background and finds it's very difficult to adapt to the urban city higher education institutions. There will be a personal attention given to the student and see that the learning gaps is addressed and they are integrated with the learning. And also occasionally education is going to be integrated with the mainstream education, which perhaps again is going to help a lot of students in quickly picking up the skills, and they can drop out anytime to earn their livelihood. So these are some of the things which makes NEP as the most student friendly and learner centric policy.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Padmavati. Over to you, sir, Dr. Taranath.
Yeah, national education policy, a conducive environment creation is very important. Then only the lateral movement and taking the different courses from a different and adding a credit, adding to a academic bank credit is possible. And as our another panelist said, for people who are from a rural area, now there's a possibility of online mode of classes, online teaching, online courses also there. There are some institutions of learning, maybe drama, music. Those things can be considered as a credits added to the general degree, so that a student can have a total perspective, having a skills of performing the different arts and other things. Okay.
Thank you, sir. So we see that there are lots of possibilities as far as learning from different environments for a student is available. We see that there is a cross-cultural movement of cross-cultural learning also that happens, which naturally instills life skills into an individual at the age of maybe 18 upwards. So if they start moving, or 20 upwards, they start moving at an early age. Through the cross-culture also they keep learning, which is an added advantage, and something which comes along with this lateral mobility that has been envisioned in the NEP 2020. So we also see travel and tourism and hospitality also to grow along with this probably. And going to tier 2 towns and cities, that kind of standards of hospitality industry also is likely to improve. A good amount of work has to happen in terms of student hostels and all that, which is also another infrastructure development related matter. So it's also going to give a big fillip to the economy as a whole from a different perspective to look at it. Thanks so much for that. Now, having said what is available to the learners through NEP 2020 as through the multidisciplinary learning and the academic credit bank and movement across geographies and lifelong learning and all that, that's on the one side. And on the other side is the already existing higher education institutions in a particular manner, with particular courses being offered and all that. So what are the likely challenges that the existing higher education institutions are likely to face, and how should they really be prepared to face these challenges during this transition. And also throw some light on how and when should they really start? Should the preparation start right now? Where should they start it from? Are there already institutions which have initiated? Should they draw some insights and inspiration from there? I've thrown a whole lot of questions relating to this. I think we could start with Dr. Padmavati. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Your question is actually a question of many stakeholders outside, I should say, wherever we have gone and have interacted with a higher education institution like universities and colleges. We feel a lot of inhibition and a lot of apprehension about whether the multidisciplinary education is going to happen at all. So I would say that the current higher education system is finding it really hard to transit from the existing mono or single discipline approach to learning to what has been said in the NEP. They're so used to the current system, they find it, there is a sort of a shackle, and they find it's really not going to happen. So the first challenge we need to address is our mindset, the mindset of the higher education institutions and the stakeholders. So we all know that even in the ancient India, students were exposed to multidisciplinary learning. So this is not something totally new to India. So what is really needed at this point is the unlearning and relearning by faculty members, as they are going to play a very important role in realizing the multidisciplinary education. And of course, they need a lot of support from each and every higher education institution in doing so. And we must also realize that the multidisciplinary education is not synonymous with opening discipline-wise standalone departments. Many of the colleges and universities think, madam, we already have a commerce department, we have a science department, we are offering a humanities and social science. Aren't we multidisciplinary? We are already into that. No, this is what the perception and approach is being. This is absolutely not the multidisciplinary education that is envisioned in the NEP. What it says is it is more to do with the pedagogy of bringing in interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary approaches to understanding a particular concept or a problem or a challenges that the country and the global is facing. As of today, we know that any single issue that a country or a society is facing, we need to address it at in a multidisciplinary approach. There is no single approach to resolving any issue. So this is also, included as a part of the sustainable development goals. So if we have a multidisciplinary approach to an issue, addressing an issue, we are also addressing the sustainable development of a country or a community or the institution. So this is what the multidisciplinary learning is all about. And it is not just setting up departments and saying that we are already into. And as Dr. Chetan was also mentioning, there are quite a few institutions which are offering this multidisciplinary education in India. Like probably, I don't want to take name as of now, but some of these institutions have a heavy tilt towards the Western approach of multidisciplinary. And what our NEP says is the entire approach should be India-centric, based on India's values, India's ethos. So we probably have to reinvent multidisciplinary modules of learning with India-centric approach. And this is probably going to be the way forward for the higher education institutions and many organizations involved in the implementation. Thank you. Over to you, ma'am.
Dr. Padmavati, before you close on that note, for this question, please tell us when should the preparation start? And
it's right now. In fact, we have already initiated. We have told the higher education institution heads and faculty members, start thinking. Start your intellectual activities right away. So don't wait until the frameworks to come from the center or the states. The policy has been accepted. We already have certain clue within the policy, certain direction within the policy. So based on those directions, taking that as the reference point, if we start, preparing at the intellectual level, preparing to address our mindset that it's not possible kind of a thing, then we are already into that. In fact, whomever we have met, we have already told them, please don't wait, start off. It's not that you violate or go against what the center or state says. The policy has given a fair amount of vision or philosophy of how it is going to be. And based on that, we can start the thinking, at least, at thought level, we can start off. So mental preparation is more important and much more important than waiting for the guidelines. So I'm telling all the higher education institutions and faculty members, please start right away.
So it's now and
you
now.
Have no choice.
Yeah, so it's now and now and now. That's it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Dr. Taranath, your perspectives on the question. It's about what are the challenges that the higher education institutions are likely to face in the multidisciplinary era of NEP. So you're part of a public funded university. So what's the preparation at your university in any case if it has started, and your thoughts on it, sir?
Our university is in the initial stages of implementation of the India National Education Policy. And also, as in a nascent stage, as university is a holistic approach. What is important is a holistic. When you have a holistic approach, we have a multi-dimensional approach to address the challenges and solutions, to train the individual in that perspective, involving all the disciplines of study. And whatever universities now, we have in the different departments, interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, and multidisciplinary. So having now, we already have a credit-based system, choice-based system. There one can study music, yoga, and other things. We are on the way for a national implementation, a national educational policy implementation, Karnataka University. Okay, madam.
Very nice, sir. So there's one institution which the others who are yet to begin can look up to, Karnataka University in Harvard. Thank you, sir. Dr. Chetan, please.
Yeah, so I think the key keywords that you had flagged was challenges, preparation, and when should they start. I think when should they start is a very complex question, because as we see from 1968 policy, 1986 policy, if we keep questioning when should we start, then it would be never going to happen, as you rightly said, now or never. I think most of the policy recommendations are such that they can be started at the institution level right now. At this number one, and number two, I think very often we tend to, if we don't want to start, we can blame the government at the state and central government for circulars, for bills to be passed, and so on and so forth. I think that's what I would like to come in and say, that in a much more rhetorical way, I would like to say that there are a lot of policy points that can be implemented right now without much of any circulars, guidelines, and so on and so forth. So that is first point. I think the second is the preparation point. I think the one group of people who are already prepared to adopt NEP are students. They are ready already.
That's nice.
And they are waiting. And that's what we can always sense. Not necessarily that they voice out with the same language that we are ready for NEP, but what is said in NEP, they're already ready. I think we are late as faculty members and administrators to give it to them in terms of what they want. That is where I would come to the institutional perspective. The state government and the central government are doing their work in terms of having the draft bills, discussion, and also so on and so forth. At the institutional level, I would strongly urge on this forum to those who are listening. I think one thing you could start with and be prepared is to have your institutional development plan, short term, mid term, long term, which clearly lays out that what is that you aspire for the next 3 years, 5 years, 8 to 10 years, whichever the date, whether it could 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or 3 years, 5 years, or 7 years, 10 years. But at least have a institutional development plan which clearly lays out what is that they would like to be prepared with, and also at the same time highlight the challenges that they're facing in overcoming those set of barriers that they would envisage or expect to come forth to implement NEP. I think that is where I would say it is very important to make that IDP very consultative. It should not be top down. It should be very consultative process with all the faculty members, students, and administrators coming together and drafting that document, and move on from mere vision mission statements to the development plan. And again, that would also raise an issue about the challenges that could they face is faculty development component as well as the university governance and leadership component, because we should not now blame the keep blaming the regulatory system always. There are also issues which are at the institutional level, and I think that is something which we could start with as an institution, and that IDP could be the way forward, which could set forth the pathways that they would adapt to implement NEP. So it is again my first point, of the institution, by the institution, and of the institution stakeholders, or for the institution stakeholders.
Got it, Dr. Chetan. So it's the institution development plan that the higher education institution should put in place. But to conclude this question, may I request one of you to tell us if there is one organization, one or two or several organizations that any of the HEIs can look up to for support in case they say that, yes, we are interested, we would want to start and we want to have the first mover advantage. Are there organizations or people or, I don't know, platforms where they can take support from?
I'm not very sure. I have been interacting with several higher education institutions as well as the other research organizations. I haven't come across much, but as I mentioned in my introduction, Center for Educational and Social Studies, by virtue of its president having involved in policy making and also the Karnataka State Task Force for Policy Implementation, we are very closely working with several government departments, government agencies, as well as higher education institutions. I can proudly say that we have been the leading organization in the state helping higher education institution implement the policy. I don't say we are the only one, but because I honestly admit that I'm not very sure. Yes, there are some of the organizations working in the school sector. You come across NGOs working in the school sector a lot. But in terms of higher education institutions, there are probably, we are in the forefront, I should say. From the not only now, from the policy making up till now, we have been very deeply engaged. So I could say we'll be very happy to help higher education institutions. In fact, we also have a very clearly stated out engagement plan to help institution to transit from the current position to what has been envisioned in NEP. So we have a customized plans for each and every organization to move towards their stated goals. So we'll be very, very happy to help the institutions, colleges and universities in empowering them to implement this policy. So I'm talking about my institution, maybe Chetan and Sir would be knowing many more organizations which are in the field helping, and we can be a partners, we can collaborate and see that we take this policy forward.
Right. There is an aspiration among quite a good number of institutions, small institutions, which have been single discipline or two discipline or two or three discipline institutions, be it even an engineering institution of repute too. But they are stuck with how do we start, where do we start, can we see some examples kind of. So for the use of all the audience, I threw this question. Moving on to the last bit, one question, probably we would in 3 minutes be hitting 60 minutes time. We have 90 minutes with us. I think we could take another 10 minutes before we pass it on to see Vishu, the Tech Bharat team. There are two important questions. One is, yes, so much more of the Gen Y and the Gen Z generation, which has a lot of expectation as students the kind of aspiration among the rural graduates too is very big. They're ambitious. They are looking at acquisition of not just the knowledge, but also the kind of resources that they spend in higher education. They are looking at monetizing it, which is a very important aspect given the socioeconomic conditions of our country. In the process of ensuring that they acquire a skill-based education which they can put to use and monetize the higher degrees that they acquire in addition to the enjoyment and the experience that they draw from the higher education. This is big requirement for the talented teachers too on the other side, with a whole lot of multidisciplinary knowledge and understanding and all of that. And typically, the professional development in India has been the way we have all seen for the years. So, what is NEP 2020? What has it envisaged in terms of professional development of college teachers, in the sense higher education teachers? So much work has been happening, and so much work is in terms of teacher education has been spoken about. There are very good institutions which have come up in strengthening the teacher education too in the private sector. But when it comes to higher education, that is a big vacuum, and there is a big vacuum in the space. So please throw light on what does NEP look at, and how is it addressing the college teacher requirement in terms of competency-driven professional development. So I emphasize the word competency-driven professional development. How is this going to be encouraged or put in place through NEP 2020? Dr. Taranath, we could start with, sir.
We have under University Grants Commission Human Resource Development Centers. They are attending this aspect to develop the competency among the teaching fraternity, conducting a regular programs during their course of imparting the session teaching. Regular training programs for the college teachers is organized by HRDC, and also we are having on our campus Karnataka Higher Education Academy. They are also concentrating on the this training to enhance the competence of delivery of the teaching fraternity to the college teachers.
Okay, thank you, sir. So competency-based professional development is the key that is being looked at. Dr. Padmavati?
Yeah, in fact, just to add to what Sir said, in fact, the policy also has specially mentioned there's a teacher capacity building is going to be undertaken, and they also have a tenure tracking system, and a lot of provisions has been provided within the policy to ensure that teachers' professional development is continued and supported. In fact, there is a space provided for teachers to, take sabbaticals and update their skills and their knowledge required for, to be a part of this NEP education. So the policy says they will be mentored, handled, and provided all sorts of provisions to see that their capacity is well builded and they are taken on the.
Okay. Dr. Chetan, would you like to?
Yeah, acknowledging Professor Taranath sir and Dr. Padmavati's points of view, I would like to just add 2 points in addition to what they've shared. Tenure track is a very important policy recommendation which would create lots of change and evolution of competence-based learning. Second is in terms of what we can see is the notion of just my daughter is seeking my time. NEP talks about teachers and faculty at the heart of learning process. It's a very important thing, heart of the learning process. And for them, we need to create that ambient environment. That's what I would like to stop over. Yeah.
Moving on, the other important highlight, significant highlight of the NEP 2020 is the internationalization or globalization of Indian education system. We see that commercialization and globalization are two phases of the same coin. However, the focus of NEP 2020 has also been to draw a fine balance between the two with the aim of making education at all levels accessible and affordable to all. How has this been thought through the implementation of NEP 2020? Meaning, what are the opportunities that are available to foreign players at different levels of the Indian education system as NEP rolls out? What are the opportunities available to the foreign education players at different levels of the education system in India post NEP? Anybody who would like to pick it up to start with? Dr. Chetan?
Yeah, I can just share again a couple of points here. I think the kind of trust that was missing in terms of this internationalization, especially the reverse internationalization, that is institutions, higher education institutions coming from abroad and settling down in India or establishing their branch campuses in India, especially, which was not new to India actually, as rightly mentioned. Nalanda, Takshashila, Vikramshila have been test of time and have established themselves globally. And though institutions were not coming, there were individuals who were coming, who were institutions by themselves. But anyways, that was a time of that kind. Today, I think the concept which has been discussed about in NEP is the internationalization at home. Like how do we enable an ecosystem of higher education, which is very unique, which appreciates India-centric approach on one hand, at the same time look at how the global knowledge economy is evolving, knowledge society is evolving, and appreciate those. But what is very critical, and why is this model needed? As we have also seen during NEP policy making context, there is very limited India-based research on Indian problems by Indians. I think that ecosystem is missing. I think what happens is the same scholars, when they go abroad, they really outperform. I think the ecosystem is something which I think that is something which internationalization at home tends to create and recreate rather. And the last quick point here in terms of internationalization I would flag is, I think there's a lot of now the trust which is building among Indian institutions also establishing campuses elsewhere. At least what we have seen with institutional eminence who have been now rather asked to or given some sort of green signal from the ministry to establish campuses elsewhere or establish there. Because currently we are just engaging in student and faculty exchange, and it was very limited. It was rather personified. But now I think with this branch campuses and all other momentum building with the deep rooted India-centric approach, I think we are seeing a lot of things changing in the next few years. And internationalization at home it was long delayed policy intervention. Fortunately, now we are seeing it is coming through. And I think QD, as Professor Taranath is also here, once upon a time, it was known as Harvard of the East. Now we need to revive that whole ecosystem so that it also emerges as a model institution in terms of internationalization. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chetan. Sir, Dr. Taranath.
Chetan has nicely put the things very nicely. Internationalization at home, as evident in our ancient universities, Nalanda and Takshashila, Vikramashila. The people, as a personal level, their institution themselves are coming to India and staying here and studying. So same thing as it should also be a policy-driven thing. Once a policy-driven thing, and when it will be in a pipeline, and people, institutions of outside, our institutions at the global level can be established in outside countries.
Right, sir. Before we close, we have three very interesting questions from the audience, actually. Very pertinent questions. We didn't touch upon the school education at all. So I take this question. I'm sure I have the attention of all the three panelists here. NEP states inclusion of coding is a multidiscipline for school kids from class 6 onwards. How is the government or the agencies envisioning usage of coding and ways of teaching, etc.?
In fact, there are a lot of private schools which have already introduced, and they are doing pretty well, because the student of the kids of this generation have a special, intuitive knowledge, and they're very good at coding or programming. We adults, grown up adults, still have some sort of inhibition in handling the new generation gadgets or learning programs or coding, but they are very comfortable. So they are actually ready to learn that, and it's already there in the private system. Now, what is the thinking is the same must be introduced even at the public school system, so that our students, the large number of students, go to the public schools. So they are not left out from the required knowledge for 21st century knowledge. So probably the first thing they will start is to incorporate this in the curriculum, in the text, and also train the teachers to do so. So these are the two critical components, and I'm sure the department will look into this, and they will take it up as required.
Okay, so which means the teacher education also is going to see a transformation with 4-year full-time and a conscious decision made by takers of teacher education.
Very true, very true, very true.
That incorporated again, a multidisciplinary approach to teacher education, and coding could probably be one of those subjects that they very intensely learn also, and they are there as teachers in the coming years. So the current teachers need to be equipped with that, with kind of training that may be required. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Padmavati. So we move on to the next question from the audience, which is about after implementation of NEP 2020, as an individual, can one do a dual degree, one full-time and another part-time, or correspondence online parallelly? So at a single point of time, can I take up 2 degrees? Can I pursue 2 degrees? Is the question from the audience.
I take that quickly.
Yeah, Dr. Chetan.
While the NEP does not provide that sort of micro-level detail, while the NEP does not provide that kind of a micro-level detail of this dual degree or multiple degree, and dual degree in terms of dual pathways, in the sense one offline, one online, and so on and so forth. Well, it is left to the, as I mentioned earlier, the autonomy given to the institution will be the one institution will be the one who will decide whether that is feasible or not. I think that is where it has to evolve from there, respective independent board of governors, their decisions, because the various amendments that are also taking place in terms of the current guidelines at both at the systemic level and at the respective state level. And that is something, but on a personal note, I would not advise it. That's another thing, as on a personal note. But from NEP point of view, it is quite clear that it is left to the respective institution to evolve such kind of possibilities or pathways for the respective students to see whether they can able to provide that.
So, but what you're saying is this has been envisioned in NEP, and that's a possibility.
So NEP does not give that kind of clear micro-level mandate or recommendation, but it says that it is student-centric. It should enable flexibility and choice, at least in terms of the structure of higher education institution and the system. While these kind of provisions, for example, while I'm doing a Bachelor of Arts in one institution, can I do a distance education with Indira Gandhi National Open University? Can both be allowed? I think in some sense this practice is still there. In a sense, somewhere we have seen some individuals, but the point is that it's left with respect to institution now. So the kind of autonomy given to the institution, they have to come and decide on that, how feasible it is and how effective it is. So as long as they are confident, I think this is feasible. But as I said, on personal note, it will be too challenging, but left to the individual, of course. But yeah, NEP does not clearly say this is possible, and at the same time doesn't say it's not possible.
Got it. So it's the autonomy is there with the institutions. They decide
the student is enrolled. Yes.
What should be made available to their own customers who are the students, and know how they uniquely differentiate and also see it's responsibly delivered.
Yes.
Right. Dr. Taranath, specifically anything on that, sir? So you need to mute, yeah. Yeah. So another important question from one of the very important stakeholder in the whole education system. The preschools, they have a question. With implementation of NEP, what would be the future of standalone preschools that have been operating across the country, offering affordable and convenient preschool education? And that's one other important question from the audience. So what happens to the preschools in the NEP era?
In the public system, we know this Anganwadi is considered as a preschool. So all these Anganwadi will be integrated with the school. Now we're going to have a school cluster. So that will become a part of the school cluster. So depending on the proximity, it will also be integrated with the school system, because the early child care and childhood care and education is going to be a part of the education system now. So that's going to happen. And we are not very sure of the how it is going to be dealt with a private preschools as of now. And as Dr. Chetan was mentioning, the NEP doesn't detail out everything, like, the process and procedure. It just gives us a guideline. So for that, we have to wait and see how that's going to be treated. Otherwise, the Anganwadis as preschools will become a part of the school education cluster. And even the Anganwadi teachers or a preschool teachers will have a capacity building in terms of, making them school ready, or, also giving them the learning component. As of now, Anganwadi is basically focusing on the healthcare issues, nutrition issues. Teaching and learning is very limited. Now they're going to integrate with the school education. So learning and schooling will also be taking place in the preschool or Anganwadi levels.
Got it. Sorry if I have to. I think this question largely came from the private players in the preschool, which has actually entered the tier 2 towns and smaller towns and cities also in a very big way. Probably there is some kind of an apprehension among them as to how do we go about and where do we stand in the whole era of NEP. Yeah, Dr. Chetan, quickly.
No, I agree with Dr. Padmavati's point that the only thing is, if it, as you rightly mentioned, Madam, now that if it is a specific sector which is having apprehensions about what is going to be the way forward, in terms of accessibility and in terms of reach to the unreached, it really makes a lot of difference. I think it's very, very difficult to completely withdraw the current system. But what is needed in the NEP's perspective is the appreciation to the concept of foundational education, that is early childhood care and learning is very, very critical. What I would suggest is that the current system, with all the changes that are going to come at the respective, because education being in the concurrent list of the constitution, the respective state governments are now supposed to also give certain way forward. So one way of looking at it is that maybe you should now start adapting to that early childhood education perspective of making education joyful, playful, creative, and all those things, rather than just merely to continue what you're doing, at least if they are doing. So I think that is something that is in management, that they say low hanging fruit to start with. I think that's something which eventually becomes the norm. And as Dr. Padmavati said, the shift towards Ministry of Education from the Ministry of Women and Child, what the Anganwadis are going to witness in gradual stages is going to be very, very critical, and definitely add to paradigm shift in how the early childhood education is conceptualized as on day to day. But those who are worried about it, they can maybe start adapting to the proposal made by NEP 2020 in terms of the early childhood education.
Okay, so either they move up or they collaborate. I don't know if there is a possibility of collaboration if someone wants to actually 3 to 8 and that kind of segmentation in terms of the age group has been made in NEP. As far as school education is concerned, so kind of collaboration, if that is a possibility, they need to collaborate with the the school cluster concept that has been proposed largely for the public school education system should be looked at for the private system. I'm not sure as a layman if I have to look at it. I was really apprehensive as we started this session that whether we would really be able to consume 90 minutes of the time that has been given. But I see that the kind of involvement that the panelists have shown and the audience have shown their patience to be with us, that we have consumed the whole of the time that was available to us. Thanks so much. There are a whole lot of other expectations that Tech Bharat team had through this session that we couldn't touch upon was the global initiative of academic network for faculty exchange, universalization of early childhood care and education. Some indicative points had been given, edifying policymakers and all of that. In one or the other way, we have touched upon those points. If the Tech Bharat team, which is being coordinated by Mr. Vishu Gupta, sees that our time is up, we could conclude, Mr. Vishu.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jyoti.
Yeah.
I think on behalf of Tech Bharat, heartfelt thanks to all the panelists and Ms. Jyoti for taking time out from the busy schedule and being part of the session. I think there were some very, very interesting perspectives discussed. And I've been part of many NEP discussions, but I think after this, I found new perspectives. And I'm sure the audience too will take away something tangible from this discussion. Thank you so much. We wish you the very best. And we ask your continued support to Tech Bharat. Thank you so much. Good evening. Good day.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.